There is a divine rhythm to life that the human mind cannot calculate. God's timing is perfect, and it moves in a way that often confounds our logic and understanding. Many of us measure progress by the clock of the world, by the rising and setting of the sun, by months, years, or decades. But the God who governs the universe does not operate according to our schedules. He can bring a sudden breakthrough in a moment when all hope seems lost. He can shift circumstances with a whisper, a prayer, a single act of obedience, and transform your financial story in ways that human effort alone could never accomplish. You may have been waiting, watching, struggling, wondering when your breakthrough would come. You may have labored with your hands, calculated your steps, and yet seen little change. That is not failure, that is preparation. God is not slow, He is precise. Every delay has a purpose. Every setback is a setup for a sudden, glorious shift. The suddenness of divine timing is His signature. It reminds you that your life is not controlled by chance or circumstance, but by a loving, sovereign God who knows exactly when and how to release abundance. You cannot force it, you cannot schedule it, and you cannot rush it. Your role is to remain faithful, to continue sowing in obedience, to keep your heart aligned with His will, and to trust the unseen hand at work. When the moment arrives, it will feel like everything changed in a single day, because it did. The gates of favor will open, the barriers will crumble, and the resources you have been waiting for will flow into your life suddenly, miraculously, perfectly. God's timing is not just right, it is transformative, powerful, and unstoppable. Faith is the invisible hand that opens the doors of heaven. It is the bridge between what you see and what God has promised. Many wait for evidence, for circumstances to change, for the numbers to add up. But God's favor does not flow to the cautious or the hesitant. It flows to the faithful. Your financial breakthrough, your sudden shift in provision is not triggered by human calculation or clever schemes. It is activated by unwavering belief in the one who sees the end from the beginning. Faith is not a passive waiting. It is an active trust, a decision to stand firm even when the storm rages, to plant seeds when the soil seems barren, to speak victory when the balance sheet says defeat. The moment you exercise faith, even in small measures, you are inviting God to move on your behalf. Favor is not earned. It is released in response to trust. God honors hearts that refuse to be shaken by fear or doubt. He sees your confidence, your quiet determination, your steadfast hope, and He positions His hand to intervene. What seems impossible to the human mind becomes inevitable in the realm of the Spirit. You may not yet see the resources, the opportunities, or the solutions, but God is already orchestrating the path to abundance. Faith also transforms you internally. It frees you from anxiety, from desperation, and from the weight of trying to control what only God can manage. When you place your confidence in Him, you begin to think, speak, and act like someone who has already received, and that posture aligns you with the sudden, miraculous favor that changes your financial story. God does not reward uncertainty. He moves powerfully in the life of one who believes before seeing, who trusts when the outcome is hidden, and who walks with the assurance that heaven's provision is ready, waiting, and ready to be released at the perfect moment. Detachment is not abandonment, nor is it indifference. It is a spiritual posture of strength, a deep trust in God's providence that allows you to release your grip on worry, fear, and control. Many remain trapped in anxiety because they are emotionally chained to their circumstances, their bank accounts, and the pressures of the world. But God works in the lives of those who are free from such bondage. When you let go, when you stop obsessing over how and when the provision will come, you create space for God to act. The spirit that clings desperately is a spirit that limits God's power. The spirit that rests, trusts, and surrenders is the spirit that positions itself for sudden breakthroughs. Detachment does not mean you stop working or stop sowing. It means your heart is no longer enslaved by the outcome. You continue to act in faith, but your soul is at peace, confident that God's timing and methods are perfect. This inner calm is a signal to heaven that you are ready to receive. The same way a cup must be empty to be filled, your spirit must release control to experience the fullness of God's favor. The less you depend on your own hands, strategies, and calculations, the more room there is for divine intervention. True detachment comes from knowing your value, your purpose, and the faithfulness of the one who governs the universe. It is a declaration that no matter what appears on the outside, you trust that God is restructuring your finances, redirecting your resources, and preparing sudden provision. The peace that accompanies detachment is magnetic. It draws God's favor, aligns you with His plan, and allows miracles to flow into your life without resistance. Those who cling tightly to fear and worry may struggle, but those who release, surrender, and rest in faith will find that God moves suddenly, powerfully, and abundantly on their behalf. Obedience is the key that unlocks the storehouses of heaven. God's blessings are not arbitrary. They flow in response to alignment with His principles. Many wonder why their prayers seem delayed or why provision seems scarce. Yet the answer is often simple. The heart is not fully surrendered. God honors those who act in faith, who give when it is inconvenient, who serve when no one is watching, and who live with integrity even when no reward is visible. Every act of obedience, no matter how small, is a seed planted in the soil of God's favor. When you choose to follow His direction, to honor His word, and to prioritize His kingdom over your comfort, you position yourself for a sudden overflow that the world cannot manufacture. Obedience is not a burden. It is the pathway to liberation. It aligns your will with God's, allowing Him to work unhindered in your life. The miracle of provision often comes to those who have sown faithfully, who have given generously, and who have lived righteously even when it meant personal sacrifice. The moment you say yes to God's instruction, the doors of abundance begin to swing open. What you have been striving to achieve by your own strength suddenly becomes effortless in His hands. God loves to surprise those who obey with an overflow that exceeds expectation, a multiplication that defies logic, and a timing that shocks the human mind. Obedience is also a testimony of trust. It declares that you believe God is not only able, but also willing to supply your every need. It is in the consistent, faithful actions when you give, forgive, serve, and walk in integrity that heaven responds. The sudden shift in your finances, the divine restructuring, does not come to the hesitant, the calculating, or the reluctant. It comes to the obedient, to the faithful, and to those whose hearts are aligned with God's will. When you obey, you do more than follow instructions. You invite God to act, and His provision is unstoppable. God's provision is never random. It is always purposeful. Every blessing, every opportunity, and every sudden shift in finances is intricately connected to the assignment He has placed in your life. He does not release resources to waste. He releases them to accomplish His will through you. Too many people chase money without understanding why God wants them to prosper. They seek abundance for comfort or status. And yet the true wealth of God is found in alignment with each purpose. When your life is rooted in divine calling, your finances are not just about survival. They are about fulfilling destiny, impacting others, and extending the kingdom of God on earth. Purpose is like a compass. It directs the flow of God's provision. Resources, opportunities, and favor are released precisely where they will serve His plan. The sudden financial breakthrough you have been waiting for is often tied to a step you must take in obedience, a vision you must pursue, or a mission you must advance. God does not give wealth aimlessly. He gives it strategically to multiply fruit in ways that honor Him. When you are clear about your purpose, your financial struggles begin to align with divine solutions, and what once seemed impossible becomes achievable. Living in purpose also cultivates patience and focus. You do not panic over scarcity because you understand that God's resources are being positioned for His plan, not your impatience. You begin to recognize opportunities, partnerships, and blessings as orchestrated interventions rather than coincidences. The more you embrace your calling, the more God's favor manifests, often suddenly and miraculously. Provision follows purpose because God never separates the gift from the assignment. When you walk in alignment with His calling, your finances are restructured, multiplied, and released at precisely the right time, empowering you to live not just in abundance, but in divine impact. Everything in God's kingdom operates on a principle far greater than human logic. What you sow in faith multiplies beyond measure. The seed you plant today, whether it is time, money, prayer, service, or encouragement, carries within it the potential for exponential return. Many limit their expectations because they measure by natural standards. But God's economy is supernatural. A small act of obedience, a modest gift given with a willing heart, a single step of faith can trigger a chain of multiplication that transforms your financial story suddenly. God delights in turning the seemingly insignificant into the extraordinary when it aligns with His will. Miracles often begin with small, faithful acts. A few coins given in generosity, a moment of service when it costs you, or a prayer offered with sincerity are all seeds. Though invisible at first, they are never wasted. In the hands of God, seeds grow silently, invisibly, yet powerfully, until the time comes for the harvest. And when the harvest comes, it is not proportionate to human expectation. It is far greater, abundant beyond calculation, and often arrives suddenly, catching the world by surprise. The principle of multiplication is also a test of faith. It calls you to trust in the unseen, to act without immediate reward, and to give without desperation. Those who hold tightly, who refuse to sow, will see little return. But those who sow with joy, humility, and faithfulness align themselves with the supernatural laws of God's kingdom. In this alignment, provision is not gradual or delayed. It can surge, overflow, and restructure your finances in ways that defy logic. God's hand is always at work, multiplying your seeds, transforming scarcity into abundance, and turning your faithful actions into a sudden, miraculous manifestation of His favor. Spiritual discernment is the divine lens through which God's favor becomes visible and His guidance becomes clear. Many struggle financially not because God is absent, but because they lack the ability to recognize the paths He is opening, the doors He is closing, and the timing He is orchestrating. Discernment is not mere knowledge, it is a sensitivity to the Spirit that allows you to distinguish between what is of God and what is not. When your heart is attuned to His voice, you begin to see opportunities, partnerships, and strategies that would otherwise be invisible. This clarity is what positions you to receive sudden financial breakthroughs. Discernment requires stillness, prayer, and attentiveness. The world is full of distractions, false promises, and conflicting advice, yet the Spirit speaks with precision and authority. A person who walks in spiritual insight does not react impulsively to every opportunity or panic at every challenge. Instead, they wait on God's guidance, stepping only when led, trusting only what aligns with His word. This careful, Spirit-led action ensures that resources are not wasted and that every move contributes to the restructuring of your finances according to God's perfect plan. Clarity through discernment also strengthens confidence. When you understand the timing, purpose, and method of God's provision, fear and anxiety lose their power. You can act boldly, knowing that your steps are guided by divine wisdom. Even when others question your path or circumstances appear stagnant, discernment assures you that God is at work behind the scenes, arranging your financial breakthrough in ways that are both sudden and precise. It is in this alignment of spirit and action that God's favor flows unimpeded, transforming scarcity into abundance and redirecting your resources to fulfill the destiny He has prepared for you. Joyful expectancy is a supernatural posture that shifts the atmosphere around you and aligns you with God's favor. When you anticipate blessing with a heart full of gratitude and hope, you are not merely wishing for change, you are declaring faith in God's ability to act. Many wait for provision with anxiety, fear, or frustration, and in doing so, they block the flow of miraculous intervention. But those who rejoice in God's goodness, even in the midst of lack, create a spiritual magnet that draws His favor. Their joy is not dependent on circumstances. It is rooted in the unshakable truth that God is faithful and that His promises will never fail. Expectancy is more than hope. It is confident anticipation. When you expect God to move suddenly, your mind, heart, and spirit align with the channels of divine provision. You begin to notice opportunities that others overlook, doors that appear unexpectedly, and resources that arrive in ways beyond calculation. Miracles are drawn to faith-filled joy because it demonstrates trust in the unseen. God honors hearts that rejoice, that laugh in the face of impossibility, and that remain unwavering, knowing that He is already working behind the scenes. Joyful expectancy also strengthens endurance. Waiting for financial breakthrough can be long and challenging, but when your spirit is filled with praise, gratitude, and anticipation, you are empowered to persevere without despair. Every act of joyful faith is a seed planted for a harvest of sudden provision. The universe, under God's hand, responds to a heart that expects and celebrates, releasing favor, multiplying resources, and orchestrating breakthroughs that transform your financial story. The miracle comes suddenly, but it always comes to a spirit that believes, rejoices, and expects without hesitation. Breakthrough rarely comes in the way we predict. God's ways are higher than our ways, and His timing far beyond our understanding. Many wait for financial relief, expecting a gradual climb, a step-by-step progression. But God often moves suddenly, disrupting the ordinary to demonstrate His supernatural power. A breakthrough can appear in a single moment, a single opportunity, a single decision of faith that seems small but carries monumental impact. Those who are prepared, who have planted seeds of faith, obedience, and generosity, will recognize the moment when heaven intervenes. The unexpected nature of God's intervention is a reminder that He is in control and that human limitation cannot restrict divine favor. What looks like delay, setback, or scarcity is often the silent work of God preparing the way. The sudden opening may come through a new job, a miraculous gift, an unexpected contract, or an answer to prayer that changes everything in one day. It is not accidental, it is orchestrated. God delights in revealing His glory through surprises, showing that the power behind your financial turnaround is not your strategy, your effort, or your understanding, but His sovereignty. The key to receiving sudden breakthroughs is readiness. When your heart is aligned with God's will, when your faith remains unshaken, and when your spirit stays obedient and joyful, you are prepared for the moment of divine intervention. Resistance, doubt, and worry can delay or diminish the impact. But a heart that trusts sees the doors swing open with power and precision. The sudden shift is designed to glorify God, to prove His faithfulness, and to remind you that in His kingdom, what seems impossible to man is always possible with Him. The breakthrough is never random. It is intentional, miraculous, and perfectly timed. True financial transformation begins not in the bank account, but in the heart. Many struggle because they allow anxiety, fear, and worry to dominate their thoughts. They chase numbers, budgets, and strategies, yet miss the profound truth that God's provision flows first to the spirit that is at rest. Inner peace is the signal to heaven that your trust is unwavering, that your heart is aligned with God's wisdom, and that you are ready to receive the sudden blessings He has prepared. Anxiety may tempt you to act hastily, to grasp desperately, or to compromise principles, but peace cultivates patience, discernment, and faith. When your spirit is calm, your mind sees clearly, your heart responds obediently, and your life positions itself to attract divine intervention. God is more interested in your faith and confidence than in your frantic activity. He delights in filling the life of one who rests in His promises and walks securely, knowing that He is already restructuring every area of financial need. Peace is not passive, it is active trust, a conscious choice to believe that God's timing, method, and provision are perfect, even when the external circumstances suggest scarcity. Inner peace also reshapes perspective. When you are not bound by fear, you can recognize the opportunities, the miracles, and the sudden shifts that God orchestrates. You begin to see scarcity as temporary and divine provision as inevitable. Your faith becomes unshakable because it is rooted in trust rather than observation, and your actions become aligned with God's plan rather than driven by panic. The calm, confident spirit attracts favor, multiplies resources, and invites sudden, miraculous transformation. In God's economy, the peace of your heart is the gateway through which provision flows, and the more serene you remain, the more powerfully He can restructure your finances in ways that surpass human expectation. So today, hear this clearly. God is not slow, He is working. Your finances are not trapped by your past, your mistakes, or the world's limitations. What seems impossible now is already being rearranged by His hand. He is restructuring, redirecting, and multiplying, and He will release favor in ways that will astonish you. Do not cling to fear. Do not chase after provision in panic, and do not measure your breakthrough by human standards. Stand firm in faith, rejoice in expectancy, sow faithfully, obey diligently, and rest in the peace that only He can give. The sudden shift is coming. The doors will open, the chains will break, and your financial story will be rewritten in one miraculous moment. But the key is trust, faith without wavering, obedience without hesitation, and a heart that is free from anxiety. God does not just change your circumstances, He transforms your life from the inside out, aligning your spirit with His power so that provision flows naturally, miraculously, and abundantly. Believe it, receive it, expect it, because the God who governs the universe, who multiplies seeds, who honors obedience, and who rewards faith will do it. Your financial breakthrough is not a distant hope, it is imminent. And when it comes, it will arrive suddenly, perfectly, and gloriously, revealing that the God who holds your future is faithful, powerful, and unstoppable.